On today's episode, we are talking about rabbit toys. Easter is almost here, so I wanted to make a list of some of the best rabbit action figures ever made. So sit back as we go through 21 of the best rabbit action figures ever. Welcome back, guys, and at the time of filming this, Easter is in a couple of days, and I bet you were wondering, where do I find a list of some of the best rabbit action figures? Actually, you probably weren't thinking that. I don't know who was actually looking for this list, but I'm gonna make it anyway. When I think of Easter and rabbit toys, mostly they only came out during the holiday for decorations. I remember we had those weird neon pink or blue rubber rabbits, or there was Calico Critters, which we had back in the day when we were little. But believe it or not, there are tons of rabbit themed characters or action figures from pop culture, and there's enough to make a list of toys, so we're gonna get into it. Our first entry onto the list comes from Hasbro or Takara's Battle Beast. There was a character called the Rabbit Kid, or the hair-raising rabbit, and intentionally or unintentionally, he kind of had Easter colors. He was in this almost aqua turquoise color scheme and had pink highlights, had his dual-bladed rabbit spear. And if you don't know, Battle Beast were a crossover with Transformers, and they were kind of a strange toy line. They were really small, and each figure had a rub action on the chest where if you put your finger over it, it would reveal one of three different elements: fire, wood, or water. We never had Battle Beast growing up as a kid. I'd say the closest thing we had to it were Z-Bots. At least they were close in size, not necessarily theme. But I was happy to find a rabbit character, and this one actually came with a vehicle, the Battling Big Ram Battle Chariot, which I find a little strange. Why did the bunny come with the ram vehicle and not a ram come with the ram vehicle? I'm not so sure. And while Battle Beast did cross over with Transformers, one of my favorite Transformers lines was Beast Wars. In 2011, Takara gave us the Neo Stampy, which is interesting because it was actually the year of the rabbit. Now, I don't think Neo Stampy actually debuted in the Beast Wars animated show, but in 1999, there was the anime Beast Wars Neo, and Stampy was in an episode called Hang In There Stampy. The action figure is pretty cool. So it is a rabbit that transforms, and then the ears become part of the weaponry. So if you look at the action figure, the ears are part of the arm gauntlets, so it can use them as a defense or weapon. So pretty cool action figure. I didn't really know too much about this one, and I definitely didn't see it in the cartoon, so cool to see that there was a bunny figure made. I didn't know this, but Jaxxon from Star Wars is actually one of the most hated characters in Star Wars, I guess even close to Jar Jar Binks. But I don't know too much about the character. He debuted in the comics in 1978 in Star Wars number 8 and was hired or recruited by Han Solo and Chewbacca for some smuggling missions. But he did finally get an action figure with Hasbro's Black Series in 2021. Jaxxon has a pretty cool look. He's in a red and white jumpsuit, he is a humanoid rabbit, and he's neon green, which reminds us of another character, Bucky O'Hare. Bucky O'Hare comic book was written by Larry Hama from G.I. Joe and Michael Goldman, and Hasbro released a bunch of action figures in 1991. I'm sure most people like me, when they saw Jaxxon, probably thought he looked a lot like Bucky O'Hare, but Jaxxon came first, so I would be willing to say that Bucky O'Hare was inspired by Jaxxon. Now, Boss Fight eventually did give us some updated Bucky O'Hare figures, so if you wanted the original character in his iconic outfit, you can get that. But in regards to Easter, there was a chocolate bunny variant that looks awesome. Unfortunately, it's way too much money on the aftermarket, but that would be pretty cool to have in your collection. In 1982, DC Comics introduced us to Captain Carrot and the Amazing Zoo Crew. I guess this character has a weird backstory. He was a cartoonist, and then he ate the cosmic carrot, which then gave him superpowers. But we didn't get an action figure of this guy until McFarlane Toys gave us one. And in 2023, that is when the first ever Captain Carrot action figure ever came about. I did skip this one, but I think it's pretty cool that McFarlane gave us Captain Carrot. I don't know if Mattel's gonna go as deep and give us some of these wacky characters, but anyone that wanted a Captain Carrot now had the opportunity to get it. Next up, we have Usagi Yojimbo, created by Stan Sakai, which growing up, I always thought that he was created for Turtles. It wasn't until years later I realized that he was his own thing and eventually crossed over with the Ninja Turtles. In 1984, he was created for comics, but then throughout the years, 1987, he would cross over with TMNT, and then later, 1989, would cross over into the cartoon and the toy line. And I remember loving my original Playmates figure. I would always pair him up with Panda Khan. And as the years went on, he would actually get featured into future TMNT lines in the 2003 line, 2012, and I was super excited when NECA gave us our own Usagi Yojimbo from the cartoon line. So while they did give us Usagi Yojimbo inspired by Fred Wolf, there's been many variations of him in his normal outfit, the samurai outfit, the space outfit. One of the things that I think is really awesome is that we got some of those original Stan Sakai designs, even as far as creating the turtles in that Stan Sakai artwork. Talking about NECA and TMNT, these are the only two figures that I actually skipped in the earlier line were the Bebop and Rocksteady in their Easter Bunny suits. They were part of a Kickstarter in 2021, and for some reason I just didn't pick them up. They've re-released them sort of the last couple of years, but I just didn't want them. Now I kind of wish I had them because a little Easter inspired, but they were still pretty cool, and since then we've gotten too many variations of Bebop and Rocksteady in that line. I know nothing about wrestling, and for some reason there was an Easter Bunny that is part of the WWE lore. In 2015, Mattel released a 2-pack of Adam Rose and the Easter Bunny. I don't know who Adam Rose is, so we'll just take him out of this package, but if you're looking for an Easter Bunny figure that looks like the one that you would see if you were going to take photos in the mall, this is a great figure. I think he looks cool. He has a pretty weird mascot looking design, and I just don't know why he was in WWE. So if you know why he was featured or what role he played, let me know down in the comments. It's a little out of my wheelhouse. Diamond Select was making some really interesting toys and had some IP that no other companies had, and they had a few rabbit figures. First up, they had the Nightmare Before Christmas toy line, and in 2018 and again in 2020, they released an actual Easter Bunny. I don't know if you remember in the movie, but they're trying to capture Santa. The lock, shock, and barrel go through the wrong door. They bring back the Easter Bunny, and we got an action figure of that bunny. It says premium action figure, but it really has almost no articulation. I think the head and the arms move, and that's about it, but it looks pretty accurate to the film. Diamond Select also made a Muppets line that looked pretty fantastic, and there was a Bean Bunny in there. And I'm hoping with NECA taking over the line, they go as deep to give us a character that's obscure like Bean Bunny. He was always one of my favorites, so he's out there if you do want a version of him. But probably one of the best rabbit action figures from Diamond Select Toys was based on the Rankin and Bass Here Comes Peter Cottontail movie. Now these were released all the way back in 2001, and you didn't just get Peter Cottontail, you got his love interest Donna and the villain Irontail. And I love Rankin and Bass. I put on that Peter Cottontail special every Easter, and right now the only company that's given us any kind of Rankin and Bass toys is Jada Toys. We did get a Frosty the Snowman action figure, and we did get a rabbit that was packed in with Frosty, and that was Hocus Pocus. Now while he's not the most articulated action figure, I look at this figure and think, what else can Jada do? And I think that they could give us more Rankin and Bass. Case in point, give us some Peter Cottontail. They're also doing cereal mascots, so I would have loved to put Trix the Rabbit on this list, but he hasn't been created yet. New Super Mario Galaxy movies coming out, and we saw a tease of Star Fox. And I would love some Star Fox action figures. We haven't gotten Star Fox action figures since 2015 from Jakks Pacific. And if you remember, there was a rabbit on the team and his name was Peppy. Now, these figures were pretty cool. However, it is 2015 articulation. Jakks Pacific has been doing an awesome job with the Super Mario line. Imagine what they can do with some Star Fox characters. So I would buy the whole gang, including Peppy. I'm sure if I dug really deep into Disney's character roster, we'd find tons of rabbits, but I'm going to focus on one, and that is Judy Hopps. There's been a few action figures of Judy Hopps from Zootopia, but Revoltech I think made the best one in 2017 and later released in 2020. Sculpt and articulation look fantastic. She comes with a bunch of different accessories, and it's just a really great action figure, and I wish someone or some company would take over the Disney licensing and just give us a whole bunch of other characters. But people seem to really like Zootopia and the Zootopia characters, and we got a Judy Hopps. But a Disney character that probably should get more love is Roger Rabbit, and we have gotten some Super 7 reaction figures. Those are okay, but unfortunately we've never gotten a fully articulated Roger Rabbit action figure. However, I did want to mention in 1989 there was a cool Roger Rabbit plush made with a pull string that had different sounds, so I had to put him on the list. He's just one of my favorites. I've never played Fortnite in my life, however I do know they make some awesome characters and some cool action figures, and Jazwares made us the Rabbit Raider. Again, knowing nothing about the video game, automatically when you look at this guy, you think of Ralphie from A Christmas Story in his bunny pajamas that his aunt made him, that he's forced to wear. Outside of that little homage, this guy is super fun. He comes with an Easter egg backpack. He comes with a double pickaxe that has a chocolate bunny rabbit on one side and a carrot on the other, and then he had some hard-boiled Easter egg grenades. So just a fun toy. Again, I've never played the game, but if they keep making fun stuff like this, I'll pretty much buy them. Another video game I've never played, however I have seen the movie, is Five Nights at Freddy's. And between 2015 and present day, we've gotten a lot of action figures from Funko and from Jazwares as well. There's actually two rabbit characters in Five Nights at Freddy's. There's Bonnie Rabbit and then there is Springtrap. Bonnie Rabbit was released in the original line and Springtrap was a Build-A-Figure. What I think is really cool is that Funko gave us some Easter variants of Bonnie Rabbit, one looking like the Easter Bunny and one looking like a chocolate rabbit. So might have to add those to the collection. They're not too expensive, so I'll see if I can find them. In 2020, Hasbro's Marvel Legends gave us the White Rabbit. Now she has a weird backstory. She fought with Deadpool, Spider-Man, and I think she's a rich heiress that just turns to a life of crime out of boredom, and she takes on this Alice in Wonderland theme. And one of the things I think is really cool about her is that her umbrella shoots exploding carrot missiles. So what more can you want from a character or action figure? Super deep cut, but Marvel Legends gave us some wacky characters. Next on the list is a figure that hasn't come out yet, but it should be coming out soon because I've had it on pre-order for about 2 years now. And there's an independent toy line by Spiro Toys called Animal Wars of the Kingdom, and they have a character coming out called Kanji. Kanji is an armored up rabbit and he comes with a bow and arrow. I just like the way that these figures look. They were making a lot of ape figures, which I don't really like that much because they remind me too much of Planet of the Apes, but when they make other animals, I'm all into it. So I definitely need this rabbit action figure. He's been on pre-order. Hopefully he shows up soon. Space Jam debuted in 1996, and not only was the movie great, but they gave us some awesome figures. Playmates would pack each Looney Tune with either a basketball player or the villain, the Monstars, and two of my favorites are Lola and Bugs Bunny. I don't know how I still have these, and they're still in pretty good condition, but I loved these things as a kid. I know the newer Space Jam movies come out, and they've made other toys that are probably better, but I don't like to think about that movie all too much. These were great movie figures, but then let alone, these were just great Looney Tune figures. Second to those Space Jam figures, my favorite figure of Bugs Bunny were some Happy Meal toys, and they were dressed as DC superheroes, so you can get Bugs Bunny dressed as Superman. And last but not least, I had to put Masters of the Universe Plundor the Spoiler on this list. Plundor was released by Mattel's Masters of the Universe Classics line in 2013. And how have they not making this character again? So with Origins, they definitely should probably make him before that line finishes up. But I didn't know about this character until my cousin, who's probably the Motu expert, sent me information about him. But he has the coolest look, I think. He's this big, beefed up bunny rabbit, and he's purple, and there's nothing inherently Easter about him, but he does kind of look like Iron Tail from Peter Cottontail. But his whole thing is he goes from universe to universe and plunders and steals, so wacky character, but in the 80s we were getting stuff like that, and I wanted to put him at the very top of the list because it's one I didn't know about, but now that I do know about it, if it was to come out today, I would definitely grab him. And there you have it, folks. That was 21 awesome Bunny Rabbit action figures. So don't know why I made this list. It just seemed like a fun idea, but when I started digging into it, you realize there's a ton. I hope you enjoyed this list. If you did, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great weekend, and until the next episode, we'll catch you next time.